1. What's up, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar. Thank you so much for joining us today for this conversation that is continued over from one of the, was it the Marvel previews whenever we were doing it, and we started talking about the importance of comic book continuity, I believe. Is that when it was? And then, these guys were up in arms and just yelling at each other, so I figured, hey, we'll take it after hours. We'll have some drinks and talk and have a civil conversation about the importance of comic book continuity, or whether it's not even important anymore. So with me to my right is this gentleman known as the Norwegian assassin, Lars Pearson. Mm-hmm. Lars, where are you from? Where can people find you?
I am, many moons ago, I worked for Wizard Magazine. That's why I'm here. I was the price guide manager of Wizard. I also do work for Toy Fair and Inquest, but Wizard was the main, the guide to comics.
The coolest one.
Well, certainly the most read. I can also be found online at madnorwegian.com. Also, I happen to be something of a Doctor Who expert. And it's funny you mentioned continuity, because I've never shown this on screen here, but with Lance Parkin, I co-write A History, which is the timeline to the Doctor Who universe. And here's all three volumes. All 3 volumes. And this combines every format: the TV show, the books, the comics, the audios, the comic strips, everything. Into one cohesive timeline, one cohesive universe. This is over 1 million words, and it encompasses nearly 2,500 Doctor Who stories altogether.
Wow.
Now, the funny thing is, for all of that, Lance and I are not quite the continuity fanatics that we might seem. I mean, we keep track of it, but we're of the belief if continuity gets in the way of a really great story, chuck it immediately. Yeah.
Are we going to talk about X-Men continuity specifically? We're going to talk about all continuity.
I would be happy to, yes.
Yes, we are going to talk about all continuity. This is a really good question from our buddy Reaper XC. What's your current job, Lars? Are you writing Doctor Who continuity for a living? It seems like you are. You're working on the huge novel.
Yeah, of sorts. We actually will probably have 3 more Doctor Who books out next year. We do a series called About Time, which puts the Doctor Who stories in the political, social context in which they were made and tracks the development of television along the way. So it's nuts. And we'll have update to the Tom Baker volume out next year. And we are talking about something A History related. We're working on that. So we could have up to 3 Doctor Who books out next year. Yeah. And then I do write other stuff under a pen name, because I'm at that point in my career that I write stuff under a pen name.
Okay. Yeah. And down below is this gentleman, Kurtis, from the Marvel Epic Podcast. What's up, buddy?
Hey, glad to be here. Yeah, Epic Marvel Podcast. I forgot to. I usually put my where is it on the screen here? Right here. I usually put Epic Marvel Podcast right here, but I didn't do that today for some reason. But yeah, you can find me there. I also work with the Library of American Comics, and we're getting ready to launch a brand new edition of Terry and the Pirates, a classic comic strip from the 1930s and 40s. New edition, straight from Syndicate proof sheets. These are going to be big, huge books. And it's going to be a whole new series for them. It's going to be the definitive edition. You won't find an edition better than this.
Okay, you heard him. You won't find an edition better than that.
Yep, that's right.
That's something I really want to check out.
It's really fun. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, man. All right, Omar, love your show. Thank you, Marco. Thank you for joining us, and everybody, thank you for being here for this live show. It is live, and please chime in from time to time. I'll be checking out the chat while we discuss this.
And let me quickly apologize to all of you without meaning to. I have a new addition to my room, a giant cover of X-Men 166, which I did not realize with that corner of the screen. It looks like I've got a naked Wolverine, and you can tell that Colossus is a boy. So I apologize for bringing so much smut into your household. That's my fault.
What's up, Jeff? And you forgot to mention the butt shot there, Cyclops.
Oh, that is true. That is true. Cyclops has
Who do you think my target audience is? Just out of curiosity.
I think
hardcore X-Men fans.
Hardcore.
Well, the target audience of the poster is aging nerds like me who want, Paul Smith X-Men on their
That is a beautiful cover.
Yeah.
Lars acting like having a poster of Lincoln Logan is a bad thing.
That's right.
It's true. It's true. Making no judgment on that sort of thing. Absolutely.
All right. So the topic at hand is continuity in comic books. Just in case, whenever people, how do I put it? People of a certain category, nerds, get into a heated debate, we tend to just forget that not everybody has read the things we have.
Yes.
So please forgive us in case we spoil something. I always like to warn people ahead of time in my videos that, I might have to spoil something. But just in case, we're in the middle of a rant about X-Men or whatever.
If we spoil something, it will probably have been from the Reagan era.
Okay. Fair enough.
Maybe. We'll see.
All right. So this conversation started during the Marvel previews, and we were talking about, I can't even remember how it got started. All I know is I can't remember exactly what Kurtis said, but I thought, man.
I made an audacious claim that Marvel and DC should just stop making new continuity and just do self-contained stories that just take place kind of in their speckled throughout their old history or their old, like, different points in their narrative. And that got onto a big topic of whether or not the continuity is a good thing or all this kind of stuff. Right off the bat, I want to clarify the continuity. I don't think this is a debate whether continuity is a good thing or a bad thing, because in order for any character to have any sort of development or growth, you absolutely have to have a timeline. Like that's just how storytelling works. It doesn't matter what medium of storytelling you are in. You always have continuity from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. So that's not up for debate here. What I want to bring into the perspective is continuity still relevant to Marvel and DC now?
Is it still relevant? Okay.
I think you have to get a little more specific with that question.
Right. Okay.
That's still a very broad question.
It is absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Can Marvel and should Marvel and DC keep writing new stories and further developing these characters that have been around for 70, 80 years? Because have we gotten to the point where all the development already, like as much of it as can possibly happen, has happened without completely changing the character's core being?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think the recent years have had good examples, though, and maybe they're the exceptions that prove the rule as to what you're saying. Because, yeah, if you pick up an average comic of Aquaman, it's probably going to be what you expect from Aquaman. But certainly the new X-Men run with Jonathan Hickman has really taken it into places that it didn't go before. And there's even stuff like Spider-Verse. I think actually at this point, Disney could shut down Marvel Comics and they could just say, well, we're just going to plunder the back catalog. The IP is what it is. But Marvel, one thing Marvel does is that they still find ways to develop the IP. The way they did Spider-Verse was a nice little experiment. Does this sort of thing work? And when they made the movie, it was very different. But Marvel had tried it out. Like, okay, well, here's our version, and it's a great movie. It's an absolutely stunning movie. And so I think there's things like Spider-Verse and Jonathan Hickman's X-Men and so on that would be lost if we just kind of stopped it all now.
So here's where the spoilers come in. I feel like this is me speaking out of my butt because I haven't read all of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, but the characters themselves haven't drastically changed, except maybe Kitty Pryde and Moira McTaggart
and Xavier
and Xavier. But otherwise, if we're talking, like you're talking about them going to new places, the concept of this new Krakow or whatever, that's great, but that's not furthering the development of the characters. And they could all leave Krakoa and you can move on to the next story. And then you still are stuck with these characters that, are you going to develop them or not?
Yeah, I largely agree with you. The world in which they live has changed drastically. And this has at times had some effects on them. And they've had to stop. Like the fact that they can now all be resurrected, Right. Kurt starts to worry, like at what point are they becoming too blasé about just dying and coming back to life? Right. But going to your point, I think, Steve, for me, the fact that kind of the shape of the relationships is still there is satisfying. You don't need to refer back to vast gobs of old X-Men continuity, but the fact that Nightcrawler and Storm and Kitty have a close relationship, and then recently, well, let's bring Colossus in because we know him really well. He's a good guy, and so on. That some of those that Mystique and Destiny still had a relationship, that sort of thing. I think that enhances it. I think that lends some familiarity, as long as you don't get too bogged down, summarizing years and years and years of X-Men continuity. Those relationships standing, for me, are still very satisfying in a way that with the New 52, some of those standing relationships were chucked out the window. Suddenly the Birds of Prey don't really know each other at all. And you're like, well, wait a minute, this isn't the same characters I was reading about.
Right.
So for me, the old relationship standing is an enhancement.
So let's go back just a little bit before we jump into X-Men, because that's a completely rabbit hole we're going to go down, and that's okay. I like those. But obviously continuity had become a mess for DC Comics. 1983, 1984, they decided to change things up. They decided, okay, this is getting ridiculous. People are confused as to what character they're reading about. Silver Age, Golden Age. Batman's a completely different character. In one continuity, he has kids. In one continuity, he's not even alive anymore. So how do we fix this? And there came a crisis, right? They had the big 12-issue maxi series, Crisis on Infinite Earths. And bam, that fixes everything. One Earth, one new continuity. They even wrote new origins with the history of the DC universe, Mark Wolfman, George Perez. And that was the beginning of, okay, it looks like continuity after a long time gets bogged down and we need to revamp it. But it was it was like all the creators were not on the same page. And I always use the example of Hawkman. Like, nobody knew what to do with the character of Hawkman after Crisis, because for 3 years he was just out in limbo in different types of continuity. And the editors and the writers were just confused as to what to do with him.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, please. Were you done?
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, so that, that does show you that after a while, even the creators behind the scenes are like, okay, maybe it's a good time to revamp it with new blood, and let's get new readers in here, make it new reader friendly, have every character retell their origin, whether it was Batman Year One, Man of Steel by John Byrne, or Wonder Woman by Perez. Every DC character had a new beginning now, and that was a fresh start in 1985, 1986, with the one exception of Hawkman. But Marvel never did that. There was never a crisis for Marvel. Marvel was always the exact opposite. They pride themselves on the fact that they never have to restart continuity.
Yeah.
To
an
extent, they have a few times with the Ultimate Universe.
They've nipped and tucked,
wrapping into the 616 universe with Secret Wars, or One More Day, which is, if you sit and think about it, which you shouldn't, is a freaking mess, because you're like, wait a minute, if Harry's back, then doesn't that mean that this never nope, don't do that, because you'll get a headache. Same thing with Batman. In a way, same thing with Batman continuity that doesn't make any sense with New 52. Because DC, was like, okay, New 52 will revamp some characters, like Superman will come out strong, just completely wiping the slate clean. But with Batman, let's just tell stories around Batman. All these things happen with Batman. Like Nightfall really did happen. No Man's Land really did happen. All this stuff happened. And then if you think about it, holy crap, he's had the worst 5 years of any superhero in the history of superheroes, if all that stuff really did happen. So that's just a little difference between Marvel and DC. Marvel prides themselves in, like, we are not restarting history. Spider-Man is the exact same character you've been reading about since 1962. Fantastic Four, the exact same characters you've been reading about since 1961. And DC is like, well, if you don't like Superman, just wait around 5 years. It's almost become a joke, right? Like a meme, like wait around 5 years and
for the next crisis. Yeah,
again.
exactly. Yeah. Well, and that is Marvel does do the reboots. They just find tricky ways to fold it into the regular continuity. I mean, X-Men, Jonathan Hickman's X-Men, the
Okay.
sheer fact that everybody has come back to life is pretty much a reboot. I mean, characters aren't staying dead. They're just
But it's X-Men. Have they ever stayed dead?
right.
But-
So, and that's their way
There's
around.
a universe explanation.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Curtis. I'm sorry.
What was the question?
We were going to dogpile you, Curtis.
I didn't hear it.
Sorry.
I said that, but there is an in-universe explanation.
Yes, there is, but isn't there an in-universe explanation for Crisis on Infinite Earths as well? Like that's
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, and especially of late in DC, where like I think it's that Lois Lane figures out that the universe has been rebooted several times.
Right.
Is really quite ridiculous and fun. Okay, so Omar, going to your point about Crisis, here's the thing. DC continuity at that point was never as complicated as some people like to pretend.
Not to old people.
Well, they go, oh, it's so confusing. But at the end of the day, all you need to understand is that the Justice League is on Earth 1 and the Justice Society is on Earth 2 and the villains are on Earth 3.
And sometimes they meet.
Sure. And if you can understand that basic premise, you kind of sort of have it.
Which actually, if you think about it from reading comics, it's not that difficult to understand. I get it, because in a sense, Ultimate Universe was like that with the Marvel Universe. When the two Spider-Men met, it was like that kind of Crisis thing, an alternate reality, if you will.
Well, and that's become such a standard part of the way we view science fiction storytelling now as well. It's like any 5-year-old will understand the blending of different multiple realities or whatever. It's just, they did it on My Little Pony, so they'll do it everywhere.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, none of that jumping.
I apologize. We dogpile on Curtis a little bit. I'm sorry.
Purely by accident.
I told Omar before that I have to mentally prepare myself for everybody who's going to dogpile on me either in the comments or you guys, because I'm definitely taking the unpopular opinion here. But my main point is that we have so much history, and continuity was great in 1963 or 4 when Marvel had 4 or 5 titles, right? They had, not 4 or 5 titles. They had maybe 8 titles or whatever it was that they had to fit together. And they only had 2 years worth of continuity to worry about. And then you get to the point now, 50 years later, when One More Day happens, when, if you want your character to grow, there are certain milestones in an adult life that happen to like, tentpole kind of landmarks that happen in your, it's a career, it's marriage, it's children, it's your parents passing, it's that kind of stuff to show the
appendectomy.
Yeah. It's those kind of things. And so if Peter Parker has gone through all of those steps, where is he going to go now? He could get divorced and get married again, or he could have another child, or Aunt May has died and she's come back and now she could die again, I guess. But like, where's the growth? Those are the moments that shape you as a person, right? I mean, also saving the world, but saving the world happens in every single issue. So that's not something that's going to, I think, affect the character the way that it should.
I think it was the way it was approached with One More Day.
Yes. So
I think the approach to One More Day was, we can no longer tell fun Spider-Man stories, right? Spider-Man is married, could be having a kid, so we can't have fun with Spider-Man anymore. And honestly, that says a lot about marriage.
Spider-Man,
you can't have fun because he's married.
Well,
no, it's a different kind of fun, but you know what? I mean, that was the way it was marketed. Like, we want a younger Spider-Man, and it makes sense from a movie's perspective. Like, that's why they have to recast the character.
Yeah.
I think, and Curtis, I'm not saying you're right or wrong. I don't think there really is a right or wrong answer to this, because everybody enjoys different things. But I think it shows the strength of a writer how well he can tell, to me, somebody like Iron Man, right? Like a character that I think you have done everything possible to the character of Iron Man that what else can you possibly do with him? So I think it takes a pretty talented writer to come in and take a lot of the history and not retcon, and not just retcon, but also just rehash a lot of the old stories, which tends to happen in comics. And that's sometimes editorial mandate. Like they'll be like, hey, we haven't had X-Men fight a bunch of demons in a long time. We need another X-Men Inferno.
But
And that happens.
Absolutely, but that can happen. I don't think that Marvel needs to say that they need to continue on with the continuity that they're going. If they want to have a story with X-Men and demons, they can set that in any point in X-Men history and use those characters from that point of history and tell a story with demons in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Now, with the understanding that this was framed as a death match here, Kurtis, I would never murder you. Okay, it would cause me too much grief. I mean, you'd be dead, but the stress.
Also illegal.
It would cause plus. Yeah, there's that whole illegal thing. But
you would grow as a character. You would grow as a character, Lars.
My channel would get a lot of hits if it was live.
Okay, wait. So just so I'm clear where you're coming from, when you said that Marvel should stop moving forward and just tell stories from his content, how serious were you about that? Because I need to know how serious you were.
I haven't bought new. I haven't been a regular subscriber to Marvel Comics in a long time, and it's not because I don't enjoy the stories. I mean, I have a Marvel Unlimited account, and I'll go on and read the stories that I'm interested in, and I'll have a good time and enjoy it. But because there are 80 Marvel comics at any given time,
sure,
and then they each try their best to try and interlock and connect, it's just too overwhelming. So I would love to see them pare it back to 12 titles, that maybe 12 core titles that can carry on the continuity. Then we don't get these big team ups where there's it involves the entire Marvel universe. And then creators can have more freedom to tell their own story that's not editorially mandated to tie into Absolute Carnage or King in Black or whatever. And they can I think Peter David's Alien Symbiote Spider-Man is a great example. I've really enjoyed that series because it takes me back to a period of Spider-Man that I love, but it's giving me something new. It's providing new content, and it's not bogged down. It's only bogged down by a specific part of comic book history in that sense.
Yeah, well, okay. So here's what I think is the big problem with I mean, if they were to cut it off now, first of all, they do retro stories all the time. And as you say, Symbiote Spider-Man, I read it. I enjoy it very much. X-Men Legends, is that what it is? The retro series with Claremont.
Dude!
Yeah. See, yeah. So in point of fact,
pick of the week, baby.
Yeah, you can still do the stuff. The problem with cutting off the new continuity entirely, first of all, I think you are getting rid of some amazing new interpretations of the characters. They still happen. It's on the shelf behind me here. I never cared about Doctor Strange until Jason Aaron was doing it. And Jason Aaron was doing a different take on the character. And I'm like, this is really
You
great.
never cared about who? I'm so sorry.
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, okay.
And here's Jason Aaron. But the big problem with what you're suggesting, the past is many things. It is not scary. It is not dangerous. It is not exciting because it's done. And there you are really locked into the mold of what was done in the past. Peter David does it very well because he was there at the time and he wrote many of those stories. But yeah, the past can be many things. If you turn off the tap on the new stories, very quickly, it's not going to be exciting or dangerous or surprising because it's really been done. And you can only feast on the past so long.
What is it about the new Doctor Strange that you like? The new take on Doctor Strange?
It was interesting to see. He kind of he did a rewriting of magic and the relationship of magic and Strange. So first of all, the idea was that Wong, for Doctor Strange to do his work, Wong had set up this kind of secret society of followers who every time Doctor Strange got hurt, they would absorb the wound. and things like that. And he would do things like about how a world without magic, and how magic, the way lesser magicians would use it. And suddenly, like, the taps of magic are turned off, and they have to go out and find these like little artifacts with little bits of magic in it and things like that. It was a really down and dirty story about magic, I guess.
So when the new creative team comes aboard, are they going to continue with that concept?
I have no idea. See, this is where it's easier for me as a casual reader because I don't care.
Right. I'm just saying that your story could exist in a different period of Doctor Strange's history.
Sure.
And they could start it and then they could stop it. And it would still be Jason Aaron's Doctor Strange. It would just take place when, I don't know.
Well, I think, by the way, I think Comics Coda has a really interesting
This
point.
is a really good point. And it's not, and I don't want to agree with making a statement like that about everybody, but it does remind me of working at a comic book store and hearing the old guard talk about comics, and me, the young buck, trying to throw my 2 cents in. It was by the way, I finally found out what gatekeeping was because I'm an old man. I didn't know gatekeeping was a thing. I always think of gatekeeping like the Keymaster and the Gatekeeper from Ghostbusters.
Zool,
I think there is a little bit of that with continuity,
quite a lot.
And it could be it could be driven by passion and love for the things, right? It could be that, or it could be just people are kind of snooty when it comes to these things, whether it's beer or whatever they're collecting. Nobody collects beer, but you know what I'm saying? Like beer connoisseurs.
I'm pretty sure there are a lot of people that collect beer.
Okay, drinking it, yes. But
yeah.
I think there is a little bit of that, of course. I don't disagree with that. I don't think it's everybody. I don't think it's even a majority of people.
Quite a lot. Yeah. Curtis, going to your point, it's easier for me to be more casual about this sort of thing because, frankly, I'm kind of a casual reader on most things, even if I love them to death. I can go years not reading X-Men because, there's just, frankly, patches where it's not very good. I'm reading all the Krakoa stuff now. I'm really enjoying it. But, like, for me, like, I don't read it so consistently that every single piece has to slot together. Secondly, Omar, going to your point, yeah, I agree. People particularly get defensive about the continuity that they grew up with. And
absolutely.
And whereas I think when they go, well, you should only do Spider-Man like Roger Stern did Spider-Man, I that was a long time ago. But in fact, I had to stop going to certain comic book groups in town because they were older than me, and they were basically of the belief that no good comic books were made after 1972. And I just don't want to hang out in that sort of environment, because I think that some really good stuff was made after 1972.
Okay, really quick, calling out bad writing and bad decisions isn't gatekeeping. I don't think bad and inexperienced writers should be given main titles. Here's the thing with that. I will say one of the reasons, and this is in vino veritas, Latin for in wine truth. One of the reasons I didn't like Bendis was because he had what I like to call bullshit excuses. One of the things about Bendis, one of his crutches, unfortunately, is that he likes, and one of the good things about him is that he likes to talk to people. He was a big active member in many forums long before, he was Brian Michael Bendis. And one of the things that he did when writing New Avengers was he made Sauron throw fireballs. I don't know if anybody remembers this. Nobody does, just me. But that was my ass gatekeeping him. I remember writing him a message going, hey, man, like I was in my 20s and I was really upset. I'm like, when did this happen? He was like, oh, it happened in an issue of X-Men. I can't recall. And in my head, as a 20-something-year-old guy that had read every issue of X-Men, not without even freaking meaning to, I said, bullshit. No, it did not. And there is a difference in calling out a writer. Like, he doesn't mean that he was a bad writer. It just meant that he just maybe remember things different, or was just making up crap because he could have easily said, man, I don't know, I was just bullshitting around. Sauron throws fireballs now. My bad. Second mutation, baby. Yeah, that's all he could have said. But instead he gave me, he actually gave me an answer. This is back when, like I said, before he blew up big and he was still an active member of different forums. I can't even remember the name of the forum. It was before his own forum. But it was just interesting to see that response from a writer, and then as a reader, as somebody that had read all the stuff of X-Men, it's something minute, like doesn't even matter in the long scheme of things, but it kind of upset me that the writer of this character is now making up crap.
Okay, well, okay. Here we need to talk about Sherlock Holmes because the very first fandom of all, as we commonly recognize it, was Sherlock Holmes fandom, and they kind of made Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's life a bit miserable because they would read the stories and keep track of these little nitpicky continuity points.
Okay.
And the thing is, there are some inconsistencies in there, particularly about John Watson's marital status. And they would like write to Conan Doyle and like be kind of like twitchy about this and go, well, you said over here that, you know, John Watson this, and you said over here John Watson this. And Conan Doyle is sitting there going, for God's sakes, these are made up stories that are made to entertain. And nitpicking on this little tiny stuff is really, you're missing the point. And if we're being honest, he was kind of right. And so I think when we talk about continuity, the problem is we get so bogged up in tiny details. Really, we should, big picture stuff, I get it. I do. And this is why like season 7 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer is hard to watch because it completely
7, not 6. Interesting. Okay.
Well, but I'm gonna say, but particularly 7, because it completely rewrites the rules. It completely rewrites the rules of the Slayer inheritance with no explanation in universe, and so suddenly you have an entire season that makes no sense because it's all predicated on this giant whacking continuity error. So if it's big picture stuff that interrupts the forest, fine. But much like Conan Doyle, we shouldn't get too twitchy about the trees.
Look at Star Wars. If we're gonna talk about continuity and fandom,
well, dear God,
episode 1, and I'm not even gonna go down that road, but I'm just saying, there is a reason why people get genuinely upset about these things. If you establish a certain set of rules for characters, and people grow to love these characters like they're real people, right?
Yeah,
like,
and that's great. That's what every writer and every artist aspires to, having your creation really mean something to the people that they're talking to. And so, but yet now we've gotten to a point, especially I think with, nerd culture as it is now, is that we expect it. It's something that has to happen. It's our, and we have a right to complain about it.
Much like the Conan Doyle fans, we expect perfection, and we just shouldn't. Star Wars is a different case because that episode 1 didn't just like rewrite the whole premise of Star Wars. It was also, a terrible movie in my view.
Okay, wait. And also not done
which offends you more, the continuity, stomping, or just that it was badly written and badly acted?
Well, it would be like it's hard to compare it to something Western comics because there are really no creator. I mean, you can't think of X-Men without thinking of Chris Claremont if you read that era, right? So it would be like Chris Claremont coming back and saying, you know what, Wolverine and Jean were banging the whole time, and Cyclops didn't know about it because he's got these little midichlorians in his head. Like it just. Because it was the creator that came back and changed things, right? End of the day, that's continuity, and that is canon. No matter what happens, whether you're happy with it or not, you can argue all you want, but things that change and they stick in the comics, that's canon.
That's Sins Past, where Norman and Gwen Stacy.
Oh, well, actually. Oh my God! I actually said actually. Forgive me, please.
Stuff like this makes me so glad that again I'm a casual Spider-Man fan. I'm not hugely invested in Spider-Man. I own some of it, but not much. And so, what you're describing. Is that a shock to you? No, I knew about it.
Okay.
It sounds hideous. It sounds utterly hideous. But I was still, because I'm not slave to all of it, I was still able to enjoy Dan Slott's run. I thought Dan Slott's run really was a lot of fun. It was an interesting concept and so on. And that hideous awful thing you just mentioned, well, that happened over here.
It wasn't a religious thing, man. It was microscopic beings. Anyway,
that's awful.
And I think, somebody mentioned it. I think it was Ryan in the chat. Here we go. This is a good comment. I can't stand how people say, "How can you get mad? It's just comics. You dedicate time, money, and effort into this. You're gonna feel something."
Yeah.
Yeah.
We all do. We all
I agree. Up in the realm of all sanity. Yes, I agree. There is such a thing as taking your hobby too far, but yes.
I agree with that. Death threats, that nonsense does not.
Or just confronting writers at conventions, for God's sakes, leave them alone.
And we all care. I mean, that's the reason why we're all talking here together. It's
Yeah.
the reason why we go to see movies with friends, and like it's because we share common interests, and we do love talking about this. And I mean, my podcast is solely based around talking about the continuity of Marvel Comics. Like that, it's just that it is. Now, my next question is well, not my next question, but one of the other points I wanted to make was that we have because Marvel and DC are so interconnected, things have to kind of progress in a certain fashion all together at the same time. I know there's this like sliding scale, but as soon as Sue and Reed had Franklin Richards, we had a conundrum. Does he stay a baby forever? Or does he age to a certain point and just stop aging? Now in the comics, he's a teenager because they wanted to give Franklin a younger sister. And so let's say Franklin Richards is.
I haven't read the slot. Is he a teenager? I haven't read the slot run.
Yeah,
they're both pretty young.
He's a teen. Actually, he started aging some up in.
He was weird, like 8 years old.
Go back, yeah, that is the child that never grew, and then all of a sudden,
he's really
old. With Heroes Return.
He's like Worf's boy.
No, in Heroes Return, he was still young. He was still like under 10 years old, and
they had a baby.
They
had Valeria, right? And then in Mark Waid's run, you started seeing him age up, and then Jonathan Hickman came in and immediately aged him up pretty quick.
Right, because he kind of had to.
But it's just so weird to see it done like that.
But if we have a character like Kitty Pryde, she was 13 years old or whatever when she was in Claremont's run, right?
Yes.
And then Jubilee comes along, and she's 13 years old. So all of a sudden, Shadowcat can't really be 13 years old now because she's been around for so long. So they gotta age her up.
She hasn't been 13 for a while.
Well, now she's adult, and I mean the same with the X-Men. The X-Men were all teenagers as well, but they seem to have grown up way faster than the Human Torch has grown up.
Yeah. But see, now we're starting to overthink it a little. I mean, this is the problem. I mean, at the end of the day, as long as they maintain the sort of basic ratios that Storm, Nightcrawler and Colossus are like, this age. Kitty is this age.
Well,
and maybe possibly Jubilee, who has had a child, is this age. As long as those ratios stand.
Adopted child.
The actual ages.
Colossus was always supposed to be really young, wasn't he? He was a teenager when he entered Giant Size X-Men.
18, I think, when he joined.
He was younger.
Yeah.
Well, but see, I think there's a reason they don't name hard ages.
Yeah,
I mean, exactly. I don't. Maybe certainly on the Claremont run, I don't think they come out and say Colossus is this age. You just kind of make certain assumptions.
I thought for some reason he was 18 in the Giant Size one.
Yeah, I think so.
I could have sworn he was 18. Yeah,
pretty sure.
Because there was that whole thing between him and Kitty. Just wouldn't fly these days. Even though they're both teenagers, but obviously one's 18, one's 13, and. Yeah, but ages to me never, I don't know what it is, and I'm honestly not a stickler for continuity. I started, the more flexible I became with continuity, I enjoyed more stories. I don't think I would have enjoyed Vision as much if I just grabbed onto continuity.
Right.
But so age to me was always like, okay, I have a basic understanding that Batman has been Batman for 5 years.
Well, that's just it.
That's it. No matter when I'm reading Batman, Bruce Wayne, has been Batman for 5 years. That's it.
He's gone through so many Robins in that amount of time.
Cyclops is in his 30s. Jean, I assume, is in her 30s, late 20s.
Batman's a pretty good example of what I'm talking about. I mean, Bruce kind of by necessity has to be in his 30s. his sidekicks are in their 20s ish. Damien's like really a lot younger, and beyond that, we shouldn't think about it too hard.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I would love it.
Therein madness lies.
That's why I would love it if Marvel and DC they can keep publishing new stories and keep their titles going, but divorce them from each other, so that Batman can have his own. I mean, they kind of do this with Batman already, maybe, but with New 52. But
so there would be no Justice League.
No, there could be a Justice League. It would just be its own thing, and it wouldn't bleed over to the other titles.
My friend, I think trying to run like 12 different continuities is kind of untenable.
But Lars, to your point, though, you did say that DC continuity was not that complicated before Crisis.
Right.
So if you
is it going to really be more? Is the readership going to find it more satisfying if suddenly Batman in Justice League is divorced from Batman in Batman? That starts to rapidly run out of control, and not be satisfying, because now you're gonna have such a completely divergent version. You're basically taking the main universe, dicing it up, ultimatizing huge stretches of it. I don't think that'd be very satisfying.
And yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good example. Or like when Batman stopped its continuity to run its year one story,
right?
And they just told a tale from the past.
Sure.
One of the best Batman stories there, and they didn't have to. Yeah, and
And
so it's like, why can't they just do that? It's like now Batman's going to be tell the Batman year one story. Now then the next story arc is going to be Batman in the 60s, or next story is going to be Batman just after Cataclysm, or
for exactly the problem that I just said. If that's all you're doing, it will get boring. It will get boring very quickly if that's all you're doing, because the past is known.
Maybe that depends on the writers you have, because I think some of the best loved Batman stories are the ones, the killing joke, the ones that don't have.
If you get an imaginative writer, the equivalent of a Grant Morrison, whomever, who has some good ideas, it's wasting them to say, well, we're going to lock you into writing it like it was when Cataclysm was going on. Better let them explore their new ideas.
But I wouldn't say the editors call the shots on when the writers, where the writers have to place their stories. That would be the writer's option. So if like Jeff Loeb comes along and says, I want to do Long Halloween, and it's set in this very particular point of Batman history, then you let him do it.
But you see but hopefully you see what I'm saying. If you bring in a new writer who's not written Batman before, and they've got great ideas, then let them deploy those great ideas. Don't instead go, well, you have to do it in this mold, because that would be very limiting.
So, but I guess it depends on what their new ideas are, because they could still do their story, but it doesn't have to say you have to follow everything that came before.
What have you gained by shackling them in that fashion? What have you really gained?
And aren't you still relying on continuity if you are gonna play?
Yeah, then you're really relying on continuity,
and not just one continuity, multiple continuities. If you're saying, well, okay, this story takes place during between Jeff Loeb's Long Halloween and Victory.
And by the way, writers can come in and revisit stuff all the time. They just put out a new Long Halloween special, which was after however many years it's been since Dark Victory, taking another look at the Long Halloween, and they can do that as much as they want.
Right. So, okay, Alex ACDC 93 says Kurtis's idea actually enforces continuity even more. And so I'm not saying that we need to do away with all past continuity. I'm just saying, do we need to continue the current storyline as it is and keep going? Or can all of the stories that the writers have ideas for just be a story? And not like, can we just go into a model of miniseries instead of ongoing series?
Well, you can, up until the point that there's such massive continuity clashes that that series to series, it just isn't emotionally satisfying.
Who's your favorite character, Kurtis? Like, favorite comic book character of all time?
The Tick. No, Spider-Man. Well, I mean, I do love the Tick, but Spider-Man.
Okay.
If we're sticking to the big two.
Okay, so how big of a fan are you of Ultimate Spider-Man? Is that like one of your
I was a
big
very big
fans?
fan. I loved that.
Okay.
I loved that title up until Peter Parker died.
Well,
Spoiler alert.
That's not clear. The omnibus is called
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Spider-Man. All right. So, so you were a big fan, and I know a lot of my viewers are big fans of the Ultimate Universe. And it is interesting because at one time, I don't know if you all remember, I know Lars probably remembers, at one time, the
I'm
Ultimate
old.
Universe, not that because you were working in comics at the time.
Oh yes, that too. Okay.
The Ultimate Universe was outselling the 616 universe.
Yeah.
So much so that rumors started just coming out that they were going to do a Secret Wars 3, that they were going to roll everything into just cancel every title except for Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Fantastic Four, and Ultimate X-Men. That was going to be your mainstream Marvel titles because there were so many new readers coming back or just coming to read comics. And it was working. It was selling. Not only that, but this is when you could find comics in pharmacies, which I know is not a big deal to a lot of people, but it's a huge deal nowadays. You could find comics at Walmart, and Walmart was going to actually, the comics were selling like crazy at Walmart. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason why Marvel was looking at maybe, hey, we should just get rid of all these old comics and
that one appealed
to the Ultimate Universe.
That one appealed to so many people because the continuity was starting fresh. It still had continuity, of course, because the story continues from issue to issue. And especially at the beginning of the Ultimate Universe, the stories were all separate. They didn't connect. But then all of a sudden, like, Kitty becomes a regular character in Ultimate Spider-Man, and then they're trying to get you to, buy the other issues and such. And then the continuity gets a little bit more confusing. And that's like, I loved Ultimate Spider-Man and all of those Ultimate titles at the beginning because they were telling fresh new stories that weren't bogged down by the past. And that's kind of
sure.
I love Superman for All Seasons, and trying to think of some of these other ones, like the Marvel graphic novels that, like, God Loves, Man Kills, that are just kind of one-off stories that happened during a certain period. There's one comment that happened way back. I don't expect you to find it, but one person said, if we didn't have continuity, we wouldn't have Immortal Hulk, and that would be a shame. And I think that's completely wrong. A writer could still do the Immortal Hulk story and place it right in the middle of Bill Mantlow's run, and just start a story and then tie up his story, and you'd still have a fantastic story.
But honest to heaven, what have you gained? I'm guessing you're
gained
writing
a great story.
Why is somehow placing it in the middle of Bill Mantlow's run inherently superior to just doing it? That's what I don't understand here.
Yeah. So right, you can just do it they just did it, and that's fine too.
Right.
But to say that it's, how do I explain this?
Good night.
It doesn't have to,
Kurtis.
It doesn't have to be just at the end of the lines and immediately continuing from what came before it, I guess.
Yeah, but when you say it should take place during Bill Mantlow's run, either that makes a difference or it doesn't. If it doesn't make a difference, there's no point in putting it during Bill Mantlow's run.
Right.
And if it makes a difference, then the question should be, is it a better difference? And right. I don't immediately see how it would be.
No,
so
sorry, and that
in this case, why do it?
So that, but to the point of the commenter, it doesn't matter what point in Hulk's history it happens, except maybe in the middle of the Smart Hulk, because that one would. But even still, it's like, if you want to tell the story, it doesn't have to be. What I'm trying to say here, it doesn't have to be the natural progression of what happened before.
I agree with you, but again, if you want to do something really bold and really radical with it, you either have to find in-universe explanations or you have to declare that it's an alternaverse. And you can do either.
Or you just have to find a way to reset it at the end. I mean, Star Trek had continuity, but at the end of each episode, Star Trek ended the same way that it began. And we still love that show.
I think what I'm struggling with here is the idea that, well, we'll just hack it off and tell stories in the past. Why not do both?
Right.
So let's before. Wow, we've been talking for a while now.
Bottle's getting lower. Soldiers really dead.
I think there is a good middle ground, right?
Of course.
I think there's a wonderful, beautiful middle ground. And I think of writers like Kurt Busiek that can do magic like that, respecting the past and also acknowledging the fact, like, hey, we have new readers. Let's give continuity a break, but still please the old readers. And I realized that he did Avengers Forever for old readers, but even his Avengers run like had some really good, like, holy crap, this is a really good way to start off Avengers. Jonathan Hickman, I think, is a prime example of, I love X-Men, and obviously going off on Bendis on a message board 20 years ago, I'm a stickler for continuity. By the way, that he did not have to reply to me. He was a gentleman and a scholar and was nice enough to reply to me about Sauron. I would handle that a lot different these days.
Right.
But I think that what he gives people, or what he gave people during his run on Dawn of X, House and Powers of X especially, was wiping the slate clean, but not really. Tricking the old readers into thinking we're not really wiping the slate clean. This is still continuity. There are loopholes that we could fix things. Kind of like Pandora in New 52, right? Going into New 52 with Flashpoint, there was a character that was introduced named Pandora. And in Flashpoint, you knew that's the scapegoat. Like, everybody reading Flashpoint that had been through this many times before knew this is how they're going to go back to the original universe. That character right there. And even he did that through House and Powers of X. Like, there's always a loophole to go back, different timelines. And new readers, every new reader that came in, like my brother never really read X-Men, but he loved it. He thought it was one of the smartest things that he has read, not just comics.
Mm-hmm.
While old readers like myself was like, oh my gosh, he's actually tying things up. He actually did some research. There's this thing with Moira and Legion in this issue of X-Men. What was it, 255? This is perfect. This actually makes sense. Oh, the retcon. To me, that was a perfect way of doing a retcon, because there are horrible ways of retconning, and I thought he did a really good job retconning. So to me, I think he kept... I hadn't been that excited reading X-Men weekly or monthly. It was coming out every 2 weeks, I think, or weekly. I can't remember. Whatever it was, I was excited reading it every time it was out. I haven't been that excited since Astonishing X-Men. Mm-hmm. I love Astonishing X-Men. Whedon bringing it back home to me. But
this one, I think this is a good example, because Hickman had an idea and he didn't want to be tied down to what came before, so he kind of just did his own thing.
Exactly. But still respecting the past.
But still respecting the past. Absolutely. So John Byrne, when he left She-Hulk, and then
oh my God. Okay.
And then he went back to She-Hulk,
ignoring everything,
because he didn't want to have to deal with what happened before. Some people call that ego, but at the same time, shouldn't the creators at the same time have the opportunity to say, I have a great idea, I want to go with this, but it doesn't fit with what came before. I just want to do it.
It depends. I mean, but the way you solve that is there's vast tracts of the past you just don't talk about.
Right.
And I mean, because like a truly massive continuity clash that's irrevocable, that's probably, because I know exactly what you're talking about with John Byrne and She-Hulk, but I don't know that it upsets so much the apple cart if he just doesn't talk about those intervening issues.
Right. Well, he called it he's like, she woke up from a nightmare or something like that. Right?
Well, sure.
What was what was the show called? It was all a dream.
Yeah, but I mean, whether you do that or whether you just don't talk about it, it's fun. Because honestly, like, yeah, I mean, you have the option of just not talk. Because, like, look, even though the current continuity stands, yes, thank you, I agree.
So Andrew's saying, I think that people like reading progression and growth of.
Yes, but
I do too, absolutely.
And I feel sorry for New Mutant fans, but go ahead.
Even though the current continuity stands, even though the current continuity is more pretty much the shape it is, they just do not refer to that story where the X-Men were defeated by a bunch of circus freaks and the Blob. But
Marcio the Clown?
No, it was like early on. It was like in the Lee Kirby run. And like, they are defeated by a bunch of circus freaks and the Blob. And they just don't mention that. And like,
Batman got beat up by a security guard or one of the prisoners at Arkham Asylum.
Legion of Superheroes continuity got very self-referential, and they just did not talk about that time that a villain recruited Hitler, Nero, and Dillinger as the most evil men alive to help his master plan.
So how does that make people who are continuity enthusiasts feel? If like that's my point, is that
too bad.
Exactly, that's it. Too bad. Like if the next writer of Legion of Superhero wants to come on and do a Legion of Superhero story that doesn't, wants to forget about the past, then sure, let's do it. Let's do it.
But they have been doing that. They've just been doing it by virtue of reboots.
Yeah.
Okay, so this leads into my next point. I think with continuity, I cannot remember who it was that said. Sometimes it's gatekeeping. I'm so sorry. I've clicked on so many comments, but I think this is where a lot of people get heated over the changes in comic books.
Yeah.
One of the things, we have legacy characters. We'll say that, right? We'll talk about Thor, not Odin's son. Whoops, I almost slipped that one in there. Wolverine is not Logan anymore. Sam Wilson is now Captain America, things like that. I think a lot of that comes from a place of, I know these characters. This is not the way it should have happened. No way that this would have happened, right? And I think that gets thrown in with the other people that are like, this is stupid, right? So immediately... everybody gets lumped in together. When there are people arguing for the sake of the characters they love and care so much, get lumped in together with people that hate it because they haven't even read the comic book and they're like, Sam Wilson should never be Captain America. And this happens a lot. I see it happening. So gatekeeping in a way kind of goes both ways. Whoever said that, I cannot remember who it was. Was it Comics Coda? Was it you, Comics Coda? Thank you. Yes, it was.
I agree with you, and the problem is just not respecting the passage of time, because you're like, these are not the characters that I remember. Yes, the characters you were reading was 40 years ago.
Right. And I think everybody gets thrown into the lump sum of like, oh, you don't like it because it's a woman that's Thor. No. And that happens. And it happens. Yeah. And there are people that genuinely don't like it because, yeah, sure, Thor's a woman, right? That does happen. But there are people that get thrown in there with it. No. I just like Thor. And I know this. How did this happen?
Thor still exists in the continuity. It's just the progression of his character.
Yes.
His character is changing.
So here's the thing, though. Like, I made this comment a few years ago, and I make it every once in a while. But if you had stopped reading comics, like if you'd taken a break for 3 years, and the 3 years time was around the all new, all different Marvel time, and you came back 3 years later, you would not recognize like any of your favorite characters. You would be like, wait, what happened to Wolverine? Where's Thor? What's going on with Captain America? Where's Iron Man? What's like everybody? And it didn't seem like a natural progression. That's why some people like sticklers for continuity kind of got upset with that.
But that's been happening for Marvel since the beginning. Like, if you took a break from X-Men and came back in 1975, and all of a sudden the whole team is completely different, like, what the heck is going on with X-Men? Or there's that Marvel Age cover, the Marvel Age cover where Spider-Man's in his black costume and Gray Hulk and Thor's made of glass or whatever.
Okay. But that I mean, that was there's always a change in the lineup of characters, right? Like in the big teams.
I do politely disagree in one respect. I mean, you're right. It's different. But like I started Legion of Superheroes, which is, and Legion of fans will attest to this, a very involved continuity. And I started it right before the Great Darkness Saga. I started it when Legion had been like at that point going on for like 25 years-ish. And did it make sense to me? Absolutely, positively. Because it was explained, because they wrote it in such a way that explained it to me. They dripped in little explanations of what I, as the reader, needed to know. And then the fact that it was on the back of a 25-year continuity didn't matter because they explained it. Where I do get slightly more pissed off is where, and they haven't done this for a while, but they'll open up with issue number ones, like for Marvel. Jonathan Hickman did, was it Secret something?
Secret Wars.
Secret what?
Secret Wars.
No, it wasn't Secret Wars, but it was like an issue 1 that should be an access point.
Secret. Wait, are you talking about his ongoing series, the Secret Warriors?
Forgive me, I can't remember the title. I read issue 1 and I was befuddled because I didn't understand, like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? And my buddy Wilson was telling me, oh, well, you had to have read this other comic over here to understand. I'm like, it's an issue 1.
I hear to say, dude, that was my issue with his Avengers run.
Yeah.
Like, I read his Avengers run cover to cover, both Omnis, and I thought, wait a minute, when did Cannonball have a kid? What's going on here? And, and then people came up and said, and these are people that watch my show. They're like, Omar, you should have read Avengers World. Bullshit! Right. I should have read Avengers by Jonathan Hickman. It never said go read Avengers World to find out when Cannonball's banging.
That is annoying.
That's why I'm saying,
like that.
Going to what you're talking about, like, if you've been gone a few years, you should. I think we overestimate the degree to which people are willing to accept that if I've been gone for a few years, things have probably changed. I think they're smart enough to understand that.
Okay, but here's the thing that my point was, it wasn't okay. Thor, woman, cool,
sure.
But if you're looking around the entire Marvel universe, those aren't, like, at that time with Marvel, all new, all different. It wasn't the Marvel universe that you left, right? And it shouldn't be, but everybody had been replaced. And keep in mind, Marvel. Marvel never had a sense of legacy like DC. Dick Grayson had taken up the mantle of Batman. You knew that was coming from the day you started reading Batman and Robin. Wolverine didn't have a kid he was hanging out with, maybe Jubilee, but could you imagine Jubilee at the time taking up the cowl of Wolverine? You see my point? Like with DC Comics, they always had a sense of legacy. They had the Teen Titans, whereas Marvel never really did. Even the New Mutants got the short end of the stick in that one. Sean's saying, why would it matter as long as you always put the toys back in the box?
Right.
Exactly. It's crazy, but changes that affect long-term characters, I'm not really feeling that. Quite the conundrum. Absolutely. And they kind of fix that from time to time going back.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, is like the changes to characters' long-term history. That's Peter Parker getting married. Right?
Sure.
Or having a child or whatever. So it's like the next writer wants to put that back in the. You can't. Are you going to undo that when the next writer comes back, or you just have them? It depends.
That's a conundrum.
So
it depends. Because like it kind of depends on the character. Spider-Man's also almost a single case, because you're right. We've mentioned a lot of like really bizarre twists and turns, like One More Day and things like that with Spider-Man. A lot of other characters don't have to put up with that. Mark Waid's run on Daredevil, I think, is really spectacular. It's one of the best things he's ever done. And that's very interesting because he ends that run with good night. He ends that run with that Matt Murdock still has a girlfriend. And I didn't bother to keep reading after that. The next writer is going to find a way to get rid of the girlfriend. But okay,
right. So
you don't have
maybe
to act to undo that. But Spider-Man, I get backed into a corner, and they had several bad options, and that's the one they went with.
Okay, Lars, Kurtis, this is where I think a good writer can step in and do wonders with continuity. I'm not going to go into spoilers because I know a lot of my viewers have not read these runs. But when Bendis left Daredevil, holy crap, he left them with a big dangling plot line.
Yeah.
When Brubaker left Daredevil, he left him in a huge plot line that the next writer would have to. Those are not the toys going back in the toy box. Those are the toys being left out and taken to the neighbor's house, and like their arms are missing, their limbs are missing. Like, you got to put the toys back together somehow.
Right.
I think it's really, that's when it goes back to my statement earlier about, I think a good writer could definitely do something with characters that have been around for 60 plus years and still make them interesting. There's nothing wrong with the rehashing. That's going to happen from time to time, right? Like, I've always heard of the, what is it? The 7-year cycle in comics, right? You stick around 7 years and the same story you've read 7 years ago will come back. Mutant Registration Act. Okay, we got Civil War, baby. Let's keep going. It's going to happen again. It's going to keep happening. The older you get, the more you're going to see it. And
well, it's because we've got 70 years of stories now. We've got like it's going to be hard
Oh,
to.
I didn't know this. Mega Shrimster said the end of Bendis' run was a request by Brubaker, though.
Yeah,
I really didn't know.
I did wonder about that. Yeah,
That's cool.
Interesting.
But also there's opportunity with these big titles that. So like Deathstroke by Christopher Priest is a pretty good example of something that even recently a new writer found a really interesting take on a very established character. Or at the very least, if you're dealing with an established character, you can maybe bring in some secondary cast. You can create your own characters and bring them in and do something with them in that character's life. So I think there is opportunity even in properties that are, let's face it, fairly fixed. Actually, Superman and Lois's Kid is a pretty good example.
I will say this, like Christopher Priest's way of handling the Judas contract story involving Terra was big balls writer material. Like, holy crap. Like, if I were a writer that was like, hey, you're going to write Deathstroke. Cool. Guess what? I'm never going to talk about Terra ever because that shit, I don't want any of that. Christopher Priest was like, yeah, I'll take it. I'll do a little spin on it and, we'll see where this goes. I thought he handled that material rather well even though it's one of the greatest new Teen Titans stories ever told, probably one of the greatest comic stories ever told, there's still this cringe factor when it comes to this old man and this young teenage girl.
To be fair, we were meant to cringe. I mean,
yes, but nowadays, can you imagine a story like that being written today? No way.
No.
Absolutely no. I mean, maybe in an independent title, but no way with the big two.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
And I think that's when continuity really matters because, holy crap, he was able to take the story that a lot of people are like, ugh, we don't talk about Deathstroke. I like Deathstroke. He's a cool guy, but he did this really crappy thing, like that's kind of a no-no. And I thought he did a really interesting spin on it and was not afraid to touch up upon it. When some writers would be like, not me. I'm not writing Deathstroke. He's no hero. He's kind of a messed up pedo, right? Like a lot of writers would handle it like that. So I think that's when continuity is important because they really could have easily taken the route of New 52 with Superman and said, okay, new continuity. This is exactly what happened.
We should mention, by the way, that, again, we keep wondering about Marvel and DC being shared universes. They could tie it off. They could segment it up, but it remains a strength because it should be mentioned.
But he's sparkly.
God, yes.
I hate that I know that.
It should be mentioned if you want self-contained material, it's all over the place. Basically, everything Image does is self-contained.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Well, even Marvel
and that is stronger because of it. I mean, the Vertigo titles were stronger. Well, actually, there were some in-universe ones that were actually quite good, but there were some independent ones that were quite good. Yeah, you've got plenty to read today if you don't want to participate in a shared universe. So
absolutely. Well, I mean, I love Fables, and there's a book that is so, especially toward the end of it, gets really, really continuity heavy, but it's okay because it's a singular title with a singular vision, and it has an ending. Now it has an ending. That's what I would love to see Marvel move toward.
Yeah. Going to Simeon's point, it's always a dance between editors and writers. And you find points when the editorial control is much stronger. You find points when it's much weaker. It seems like after the New 52, editorial control was fairly heavy-handed. Sometimes you just let writers go nuts. And by the way, sometimes writers come up with bad ideas and they need to be told by the editor, no, that's not going to work. Let's do this instead. But
the editors absolutely do have impact on the continuity because it's them who get to who are mapping up like the next big Marvel-wide event, right?
Yeah. When you talk about continuity decisions, of course, one of the most infamous ones is that the original ending to the Dark Phoenix saga, Jim Shooter was like, this really doesn't work. And by the way, of course, they published it. Yeah, the original ending kind of sucks.
Absolutely. He was like, there needs to be ramifications to what she killed a planet. No, she doesn't get to live.
I believe the story goes that he didn't order her death. He basically told Claremont, this sucks. Go do something better. And then he and John went off and said, okay, we'll kill her.
So that's the way they sold
it. That's a good example of a good editorial decision.
Yeah.
I think there are great editors out there, and then there are editors that, of course, like I don't know, kind of fly by. Um,
I mean, there's good and bad everything. Really.
So there is a good thing to not following continuity, though. During the 2000s, and I always go back to this era, late 90s, early aughts, Marvel started doing the Marvel Knight imprint and the Ultimate Universe imprint. One of the titles that they did was Inhumans.
Right.
And I interviewed Paul Jenkins years ago. And Paul Jenkins told me he had never read a single issue of Inhumans before writing his miniseries.
Yeah.
And
well,
in
that's
that,
not respecting the past then.
it's not. But in that particular, and I'm not saying the Inhumans suck. I'm not going to start that. I'm just saying that in that particular instance, it worked. Not having read any Inhumans actually worked because he wrote a story he wanted to tell that just happened to be these characters that maybe it worked because a lot of people were not familiar with the Inhumans. Well, had it been like, I don't know, the Avengers or something like that, I don't think it would have worked. But because it was the Inhumans, I think it worked a lot for people. It became one of the biggest hits for Marvel Comics.
It is really good. However, technically, depending on how you draw the line, it is still continuity heavy in that Paul, never having read it, he would have still been given a roster of here's the characters,
here's the
powers, here's the major relationships, here's the villain, and he ran with it, and he did it very well. But obviously, the characters and the relationships and the powers would have been preset.
I didn't say they suck. I have strong feelings about the Inhumans, but not today.
But that's where
lovely. Yes.
But that's where my point is we understand the characters' power sets, we understand their core personalities, so it doesn't matter what point let's just do a story. If a writer has a good idea, it doesn't have to necessarily fall in present day.
Kurtis, what are okay?
But what, I don't understand why.
What are some of your favorite Spider-Man stories? With Spider-Man, and I'm not putting you on the spotlight here. I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. I completely respect your opinion. You know I love you. But what are some of your favorite Spider-Man stories? Are they standalone stories that anybody can pick up and go, huh? I don't need to read any more. Or I never needed to read any Spider-Man besides this. What were some of your favorite Spidey stories?
With a beginning and an end?
Well, no, just out of curiosity, what are some of your favorite Spider-Man stories?
Well, I love Spider-Man Blue, and I love the. Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here.
I didn't mean
it shouldn't seem like a threatening question. Name your favorite characters' best stories. I mean,
well, I mean, I love the Gwen Stacy story, which is very continuity heavy.
The Gwen Stacy story where they fall in love, or where she.
Yeah, that one.
It's okay. You can have spoilers that Gwen Stacy dies. I think there's an expiration there. Yeah.
The story is called. Actually, the trade paperback is. Anyway, go ahead, Curtis.
Craven's Last Hunt, I absolutely love.
That's a good one.
And the first few story arcs of Ultimate Spider-Man. Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane. Have you read that? It's fantastic.
My wife really liked that.
I think it's really good.
That is completely not in continuity.
Right. It's brutal, but the death of Jean DeWolf.
Yep, that's a good one.
Good.
The Moreland story that JMS did, I really enjoyed as well. Right at the beginning of his run.
Again, good example. I don't really read Spider-Man ongoing, but there was something about Spider-Verse. I was like, I'm going to read Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse was very fun.
Fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. And Spider-Man 2099.
So why do you ask, Omar? Why do you ask?
Because I want to see what drives your reasoning. If it's standalone story, my favorite X-Men story of all time is God Loves, Man Kills. To me, that is the ultimate X-Men, not Ultimate Universe. I'm so sorry. That is definitely the best X-Men. It doesn't get any better than that. And honestly, it's a standalone story. Does not need. You don't need to read anything after that. You don't need to read anything before it. I think Claremont did an amazing job reintroducing the characters to new readers. I was curious because of the way that you're thinking, pocket universes would be a good way to tell stories.
My examples probably show that then.
Oh, absolutely. I think Spider-Man Blue. You don't. All you need to have known is that Spider-Man at one time loved a girl named Gwen Stacy. You
And they
don't need to
explain that
read
at the
any of those.
beginning,
Yeah,
and
they
it's got a
did.
satisfying conclusion. And that's, I think, the best way to do it. I mean, the serialized storytelling is something that held Marvel Comics up for so long, but we've seen the sales slipping, and I there's been a push
I didn't
toward
say
graphic
anything.
novels. There's been a push toward graphic novels, right? This is, and the way that people that writers create their stories now are for collected editions. You don't see
But
the.
this is a different. This is
No,
okay,
hold
wait.
on, hold on a second.
But it is a different topic though, because we can't start talking about that. Like, and we totally can, and we can do it in another episode. I would love to continue this conversation because the topic that you're bringing up, Kurtis, there's a lot of truth to what you're saying. I would love to continue this.
But the reason I'm saying is that the way that comics are written now, are they attracting the same or the right types of people? Or if people are writing for a graphic novel, why can't we just put out a graphic novel instead of serializing it every month, and then have a self-contained story with issue 1 and 3? I don't know that economics is.
Economically, it doesn't work. I mean, it just
does
doesn't.
it though? Because
No, not for reasons of cash flow. No, it doesn't work.
Well, I mean, look at your creators, though. I mean, what would they be doing for a living?
Not if that's what you're.
They'd still be creating. I mean, it still takes the same amount of time to do 6 months worth of issues. You just put it out as a graphic novel at the end of the 6 months instead of.
But Marvel, who, lest we fool ourselves in thinking that these companies have infinite resources, Marvel would have to pony up the cash for those 6 months.
Exactly.
That's the problem. And to do that across the entire range, it
would definitely take
because I've heard that same argument with digital comics. Why don't they just go digital and then make a graphic novel? Because unfortunately, digital doesn't bring in the money that comic books do.
They would definitely have to change their model for sure. Absolutely.
It was Greg Rucka. Greg Rucka was talking about the amount of money they make digitally compared to like physical comics. And then where would all these YouTube channels be like, hey, this is the hot comic this week, Kurtis? You're going to put those YouTube channels out of business too.
But the model still works more than it doesn't. I mean, as much for all the hand-wringing about the death of the comic book industry, it's still around. Sales still go up every year. The net value of the direct market still tends to go up most years. Mm-hmm. Comic shops. I mean, it's still working far more than it doesn't. Far more. So why would they stop doing that?
Well, I don't know. I guess I would have to look at the numbers, but I think of like someone like.
By the way, a lot of comic shops would probably go out of business because the comic shops here in Iowa, where I get quite chummy with the managers and stuff, it is shocking the degree to which they're reliant on the income off the single issues.
Yeah, that's very
true.
And
it cannot be presumed that the readership would transition over to much pricier collections because as price goes up, readership goes down.
Well, I would have to say that I love looking at Scholastic as a prime example of really over-the-top successful graphic novels. Mm-hmm. They don't do any single issues. Their whole model is all graphic novel based, and
But how many Scholastic graphic novels do you see at comic book stores compared to bookstores, though? Right. If it wasn't for the book market, it goes back to Lars' point. Like you are putting out comic book stores out of
the reason I brought this up is to talk about continuity. It's not to talk about the way the comic market is failing or whatever. So it's
like I said, I would love to talk about this because this comes up on my Saturday streams all the time, and I think it's a really good topic.
Because I agree, the comic industry is not dying. It's more vibrant and more there's more variety than you could ever imagine than there has it been ever before, and it's fantastic. I love it. I'm just talking about the way that Marvel's model. I would love to see them do more of, releasing those Spider-Man Blue type graphic novels just as a graphic novel. It doesn't have to be serialized, but they would, they would have to, because then they don't have to worry about the ongoing continuing story. They can
Well,
just get a
you-
writer who has a great idea and just wants to do it.
Yeah, but see, if you're Marvel, you don't have the luxury of not worrying about money. I mean, you have to, and also you're also
Marvel's got the
making that-
Disney money behind them.
Yeah, but Marvel Comics as a separate entity still has to pull its weight, because if Marvel Comics
sure.
starts going into black, they will shutter it. But also you're making the entry point a lot higher, because if I go into the store, maybe there's an issue 1 and it costs whatever it costs, okay, I might try it out and I might sample it or whatever. Or on Kindle, it's like an issue 1. But now if you make everything like $20-$25, then I'm going to be a lot more reluctant to try things out.
So, I have so many of these Scholastic books. They are $14.
Okay.
They're $14.
I know, but look at what you're holding. That is like the #1 best-selling graphic novel.
Okay, I'll pull a different one.
Okay.
This one is $15.
Okay. No, Kurtis, I love that you have a range of things that you enjoy, and I do too. It's just unfair to make the comparison to. Damn it! I wanted to. Okay, no, let's go back to continuity. We'll come back to this. Let's do this again. I've got more wine. I'm just out of this one, and we can do this again, because this has been a lot of fun. Because I think I think we've been pretty civil for guys that are really passionate about this stuff.
I hope, by the way, it's clear that however much we spark off each other, my respect for the two of you is profound.
Oh, absolutely.
I think both of you
are even more because of this.
Wouldn't be bothering to waste my time on the two of you. I mean, it's because of my regard for you that we're having this discussion.
Look, Nathan sums it up. Just got here. Continuity is important. We'll need to rewind.
And that's not the argument. Continuity is absolutely important. It's just the use of continuity, I think, that needs to be rejiggered.
That'll be the next big push. Marvel Comics, the rejiggering.
Let's just have another Secret Wars 2022 now. And then I don't know what you want to rejigger, but they've tried. Right? In small doses? I think they have, kind of, in a way, in small dosages with Spider-Man and X-Men.
Particularly with folding Miles Morales over into, the 616 universe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
They do little nips and tucks. But again, the basic shape of it pretty much remains.
It has been a pleasure. This is the kind of stuff that I miss when I worked at a comic book store. This is the kind of stuff that I miss going to comic book stores. And part of the reason why I started the channel, and having just people chime in, whether they agree or not, whether they think we're crazy. I love it. I think there's a huge difference of opinion, and both of you have been awesome. So, final thoughts. Kurtis, you first. We've cut you off so much, and we've dogpiled on you so often.
Well, I mean, I expected that because I've got the hot take or whatever, But
that's because you're the sexiest, Kurtis, so we're drawn to you.
Yeah. And also the irony behind the fact that you have all these epic collections behind you with a volume 1, 2, 3 on them. Oh, the irony, man! It's so.
I'm saying that I love the fact that there is continuity. I love continuity, but do we need to stop continuity after 70 years and just go to short form storytelling?
So just one and done graphic novels from time to time. That's what you're saying.
Well, it doesn't have to be from time to time. They could pump them out on a regular basis.
You mean like a monthly single issue? God damn it, Kurtis. What have we learned today?
Oh, man. Yep. I don't know.
Okay. Lars, final thoughts.
I was searching around for something desperately insightful to say.
Here it comes.
Continuity wise, I miss Vertigo.
Another topic.
I know
that one hurts.
There was a lot of great stuff in there that was standalone and was hugely enjoyable because it was standalone. Kurtis, you mentioned Fables and so on, but there was a lot of stuff like Grant Morrison's Doom Patrol being integrated into the DC universe was very exciting. I think Vertigo struggled for readership when yay!
You're right,
yes, I agree with that.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I think Vertigo struggled when they pulled back their in-house character, their main DC characters, and that left them without some strong titles to work with. But out of nowhere, I'd say that's my great insight. I miss Vertigo.
Okay.
What are your final words, Omar?
my final. This episode is brought to you by Talon Winery.
Oh, it's all gone.
Actually,
You
I have
paused
friends
it off.
that work at Talon Winery. So yeah, sure. This episode is brought to you by Talon Winery. In my old age now that I'm in my 40s, and that's not even old. I'm just saying it took me a long time to learn to just let go of things. In my 20s, I held on to continuity.
Yeah.
And I held that's why I brought up the whole Bendis thing, right? Like that I would have handled that a lot different in my 40s. In my 20s, I was like, no, this is fact. This is not bullshit. Don't
So you're
lie
on
to
my
me.
side. You're on my side. Let go of continuity.
No, Kurtis, damn it, jump the gun. I'm not going there. I'm not crazy. But in my 40s, I've become just, I've enjoyed stories for what they are. Hawkeye, Hawkeye, the story that everybody regards as the Hawkeye story by Matt Fraction and David Aja, doesn't make any sense at all in continuity.
Right. That's a great example. The writer just had a great idea and they went with it.
The writer is just doing whatever he wants to with the characters that don't act like themselves.
And it had a beginning and it had an end.
Yeah. But I was okay with it because you know what? I let go of continuity. Vision by Tom King. Yeah. Vision by Tom King. I let go of continuity and I was able to enjoy that a lot more.
That has been acknowledged elsewhere is the problem. It's not purely self-contained.
It's not, but if you let go of that continuity, it is more enjoyable because if you're a sticker for continuity, you'll hold on to go, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I tend to do that with some of his stories. I know people had issues with his Mr. Miracle.
Well, see, that was brilliantly done. I thought because when I was reading this, I was like, wait a minute, is this in continuity? And I thought the way that they did it at the end was very clever.
I love the story, but like I said, I think it depends on the story that you're reading and just enjoy it. If you enjoy it, then I am no longer here to shit on anybody's love for these things. I think it's wonderful that people enjoy whatever they want to, whether it's the Ultimate Universe, which I never got, but hey, more power to you if you love it. I think it's great. It sold a ton. So what the hell do I know? Yeah. I was reading Extreme X-Men at the time while everybody was reading Ultimate X-Men. So there goes, any credibility I had. But I actually enjoyed Extreme X-Men. So yeah, my final thoughts is enjoy what you enjoy. Doesn't matter what anybody else says. Does continuity matter? Sometimes. Depends on who you ask.
That's our profound answer. Sometimes.
And that is the episode brought to you by Talon Winery.
Yeah. Thank you. All of you at home, I hope you drained your bottles while we were, talking about this.
I realized tomorrow is another work day for people. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody for joining us. These two wonderful folks, whether they took some shit from some of you all or not, they were here today and they were amazing. Norwegian Assassin, where can people find you when you're not hanging out with me, buddy?
I'm on madnorwegian.com. I run Mad Norwegian Press. And again, we do a number of Doctor Who books, including A History by Lance Parkin, which makes a great Christmas present. And yeah, that's what we're up to mainly.
Okay. And this guy down below who took the most heat, my buddy Kurtis from the Marvel Epic podcast.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to both of you for a great civil discussion. It was always really great. And also for all the people in the comments, it looked like it was very civil over there too. So good job, everybody. Yeah, you can find me at the Epic Marvel podcast where I talk about Marvel continuity all the time. But in small little doses, we pick apart the little stories here and there and go one volume at a time in random order. And I'm also part of the Library of American Comics. It's a good what is it coming up? Black Friday sale of a new volume of Terry and the Pirates coming up. Go to libraryofamericancomics.com/Terry for all of those details.
And hopefully the headlines about this podcast, streaming, will say aged geeks talked about continuity, got along.
Yeah. Before everybody leaves, don't forget to smash that like button, please. And I do want to continue the conversation, whether it's talking about the sales of comics or the other little topics that we were beating around that we really couldn't dive into today. Otherwise, it would be a 3-hour stream, which would be fun. Because this is a very touchy subject to a lot of people. Omar and bold new editorial vision, a la 80s, 90s Vertigo, that might have been achieve, but for all we have are the blueprints of that meta-modern history. Oh my goodness, I've drank way too much to read this.
Historiosophy?
Black and white?
Black and white, his new 52 metaphysics plus final crisis.
Lars, you seem like the smartest guy here. You have glasses on.
Why do you assume?
Wait, Kurtis.
Curtis also has glasses on.
Well, I can't see that. No, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Go for 2 hours. No.
No.
Not today.
Again,
I have to warn these guys ahead of time.
Omar, are you taking some days off for the holiday?
No, I am doing an episode every day.
It's nice. Good job.
For Thanksgiving? Well,
guys, I read comics for a living. It's not that bad.
People will want to avoid talking to their families if they can help it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Drunk Omar. Yeah. Uncanny Drunk Omar is right now. Omar would get heated capitals debating 3 hours. Yeah, man. Put your glasses. Yeah, I refuse to wear glasses. I want to stay young. And I do need to wear glasses. Sometimes I'm reading these small ass letters. Oh, BW means between. Damn it, Curtis. You're a millennial.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That? I'm a millennial. I'm not the same age as you.
No, you're not. How old are you?
I'm 40.
You're 40.
How old are you?
43. 43.
I guess technically I am a millennial, and technically you are not.
So
Curtis is a Canadian, and they're calmer by nature, and that makes them age.
Oh, that's right. I've never met a bad Canadian like this guy. And
I have one time. I met a horrifyingly rude Canadian, but that was.
Don't get canceled, Lars.
You must have had a bad day.
Don't get canceled by the country of Canada. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a blast. We will be back with another topic. What was the other topic I suggested?
Graphic novels versus singles, I guess.
No, Kurtis.
Oh.
Kurtis and his smug ass smile. Graphic
the best
novel.
comic book of all time.
#1 best-selling graphic novel, man. Can't go wrong.
For a reason. It's great.
It
and that's
sense.
anyone who says the comic industry is dying is absolutely incorrect.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Yep.
Shots fired. Everybody have a great
night. There's the topic for next time. Happy Thanksgiving.
Canada doesn't cancel. Can I have that on a t-shirt, please?
Have a good night. Oh, Omar went away. Kurtis, I hope it's clear that
we're still live. I think he.
Oh.